Sahana Bhavatu, Sahano Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavai, Tejasvina Vaditamastu, Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om, may the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace and beneficence be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Well, welcome everyone to our Saturday afternoon class on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, as translated by and commented on by my teacher, Swami Prabhavananda, and published under the title, How to Know God. This gives us a very clear indication that this is a workbook. This is a book that tells us, step by step, how to know God, which of course is Patanjali's intent. And so with that, are there any comments or questions left over from last week? Anything that needs clarification or anything that you'd just like to contribute from your own wisdom or experience? All right, dears. Jeff, take it away where we decided we'd leave off last week.
Yes, sir. And that was shloka number 28 in the second chapter. And I'll read it twice. As soon as all impurities have been removed by the practice of spiritual disciplines, the limbs of yoga, a man's spiritual vision opens to the light-giving knowledge of the Atman. And one more time. As soon as all impurities have been removed by the practice of spiritual disciplines, the limbs of yoga, a man's spiritual vision opens to the light-giving knowledge of the Atman. Patanjali now begins a detailed description of the so-called limbs of yoga, the various rules and practices which we must observe in order to clear the mind of its impurities. To remove these impurities, the obstacles to knowledge of the Atman, is the sole purpose of spiritual disciplines. For the knowledge itself does not have to be sought. It is already within us, unlike that mundane knowledge which must be acquired from books and experiences in the external world. When the obstacles have been removed, the ever-present Atman is immediately revealed. Now that concludes that commentary before we go to the next shloka. So I thought
I think it's very self-explanatory. Nothing need to be added from here. Anything from anyone else? Anything from your own wisdom or experience about this, the importance of spiritual disciplines and the relevance and immanence, that is to say, just below the surface of our the darkness, the ignorance that covers it, is this truth of the Atman. And so the purpose of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, is his limbs of yoga, is to remove that ignorance, that dispel that darkness, and allow the Atman to shine forth. Anything at all from anyone? All right, please go ahead, dear.
All right, the next one is the biggie because he names the 8 limbs of yoga. So shloka number 29. The 8 limbs of yoga are the various forms of abstention from evil doing, or yama, the various observances, or niyamas, posture, or asana, control of the prana or pranayama, withdrawal of the mind from sense objects or pratyahara, concentration or dharana, meditation or dhyana, and absorption in the Atman or samadhi. And I'll read that again. The 8 limbs of yoga are the various forms of abstention from evil doing or yama, the various observances or niyama, posture or asana, control of the prana or pranayama, withdrawal of the mind from sense objects or pratyahara, concentration or dharana, meditation, dhyana, and absorption in the Atman or samadhi.
Yes, that's dharana, by the way. Dharana.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
Dharana, and dhyana.
Dhyana.
Dharana and dhyana. So
always...
let's just talk a moment about the yamas and niyamas. It's characterized as abstention from evil doing. What it seems to be a practical way to think about this is it is the abandonment of a self-centered and I, me, mine way of life. It's the abandonment of selfishness. Now, if you're going to think of everything in terms of how it affects me and how it advantages or disadvantages me, you will be trapped. You will be forever trapped and unable to practice spiritual disciplines because that's what will occupy and keep your mind distracted and agitated. If everything that comes at you in life is seen as how does this advantage or disadvantage me, in other words, selfish thinking. This is the evil doing that he's speaking of. But if we abandon that selfish way of life, what are we to replace it with? This is why immediately Patanjali gives us the observances. And I won't list them now. We'll get to all that. But what it is it's a system of thinking and a way of being that replaces the I, me, mine with a thou, thee, thine beginning, a beginning of understanding what the thou, the Atman, is by these various observances. So you replace a life of self-centeredness or selfishness with a life of other-centeredness, other human beings, and compassion and concern for other human beings and other living beings. As Swami Vivekananda said, where shall we go to find God if not in our own hearts and in every living being? So the beginning of that way of thinking, and also the beginning of offering everything in our lives and all of our actions and thoughts and so on to the divine presence, which is the final one of the observances. And it isn't as if you practice these things serially, like you systematically eliminate all the selfishness and then you take up the observances. No, you do these things together, eliminating the I, me, mine way of life and replacing it with these observances that lead to an thou, thee, thine way of life. Any comments from your own wisdom or experience about this idea and this process, this way of thinking, or any concern or question that you might have?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
I want to explore this thought I heard in one of the talks that if you are selfish, or I have a selfish interest, then to explore it to the depth. For example, if I want a Tesla, uh, then explore, okay, why do I want it? What am I willing to do to get it? What will I be doing and not doing to get it? I mean, explore it to the core of that selfishness. And then eventually there comes a point that we, I guess, understand that without the other, there is no self.
Yes,
Does that make any sense? I
yes,
mean, I'm
it
still
makes
trying to wrap my
it makes perfect sense, dear. And this idea of exploring something to its depth is it's an extremely good thing to do. It's also extremely difficult to do. Well, the only way to really do it is to take it into contemplation, concentration, and meditation, and see what the seed of that desire is. Why is the mind restless for this particular object of desire? And when you can see clearly the object of your desire and what it is that is attached to it in your awareness that makes it seem so desirable, then you can decide whether it really is desirable or not, whether all that effort, money, and so on is really going to yield the satisfaction that you think it will in the imagination of desire, or whether it really isn't worth your attention and intention. So it's a very productive thing to do, very productive, and it will lead to greater freedom, freedom from desire. When you the Ramakrishna order swamis might tell you that it might not be such a good idea to spend so much time on these things, but to uh, just place the divine presence in your heart and chant your mantra and contemplate and concentrate on the divine presence within your heart. And then automatically and spontaneously, you tend to leave these things behind. But none of this is dogma. None of this is meant for everyone in every situation. So whatever talk you heard that contained as advice, uh, doubtless was very well considered and is good advice in that context. Does all that make sense?
absolutely. Thank you, Vidishankar.
Anything else from anyone? These are very productive questions. Okay, Jeff, please read on.
All right. The Swami gives us the next shloka before he provides the commentary on both of them. So, shloka 30 is Yama is abstention from harming others, from falsehood, from theft, from incontinence, and from greed. Now I'll read shloka 30 again. Yama is abstention from harming others, from falsehood, from theft, from incontinence, and from greed. We are to live so that, excuse me, we are to live so that no harm or pain is caused by our thoughts, words, or deeds to any other being. In a positive sense, this means that we must cultivate love for all and try to see the one Atman within everybody. We must think of ourselves as the servants of mankind and be ready to put ourselves at the disposal of those who need us. It does not mean, however, that we should lend ourselves to the evil purposes of others, helping them to commit crimes, for such purposes would be in opposition to the ideals of Yama. The truly helpful man is like a public trolley car, available to all who care to use it, but traveling nevertheless along a fixed route to its destination. Our words and our thoughts must be truthful, always in conformity with the facts. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that true spirituality consists in making the heart and the lips the same. But we must be careful not to hurt others by saying what is cruel, even if it happens to be true. On such occasions, we have to remain silent. It is not enough simply to abstain from theft. We must not harbor any feelings of covetousness, either toward persons or objects. We must remember that nothing in this world really belongs to us. At best, we are merely borrowers. It is our duty, therefore, to borrow no more from the world than we absolutely need, and to make full and proper use of it. Taking more than we need and wasting it is a form of stealing from the rest of mankind. Continence is chastity in word, thought, and deed. To be freed from the idea of sex is to achieve purity of heart. Sex is inseparable from attachment, and attachment is an obstacle to spiritual knowledge. Abstention from greed has also been interpreted as abstention from receiving gifts. To quote Swami Vivekananda, the mind of the man who receives gifts is acted upon by the mind of the giver, so the receiver is likely to become degenerated. Receiving gifts is prone to destroy the independence of the mind and make us slavish. And that's the end of that quotation. This may seem to many of us to be a hard saying, but we must remember that Patanjali is describing the strict disciplines of the dedicated yogi. In the everyday world, most gifts can be regarded as relatively harmless as long as they are tokens of genuine affection. Nevertheless, there are some which are not, especially when they belong to that rather sinister category described by income tax specialists as business gifts. And we must beware, in general, of a too easy acceptance of other people's generosity and hospitality. And that concludes that commentary, and there's a lot there. So,
Yes, there is a lot there, and it bears our rereading it on our own. But is there anything that particularly sticks out for anyone as reason for some comment from your own wisdom or experience, or some concern it raises, or some question that you'd like to ask for clarification? Anything at all about this, the yamas, and the what it is that how the Swami defines them?
I
Um,
can go ahead, it's fine.
okay. Brother Shankara, regarding this concept of business gifts,
Yes.
I do remember that when I was working during Christmas, we would receive boxes of candy or whatever from some of the specialists that we would refer to, and then we would give gifts to the nursing station and things like that as a token of um, appreciation for what they did. But it didn't color, like if a certain specialist sent a gift, it didn't color our, we would refer just for that. So what should we make of that situation?
Well, all of us receive gifts. The thing to look at is our sense of the intention of the giver. Is the giver trying to create some sort of indebtedness to them so that we feel we must either respond in kind or yield to their demands, or as you say in the example you gave, refer more patients to that specialist. If it's simply their way of saying thank you for trusting us and referring who you do refer to us, and thank you for your confidence in us, and so on. In that instance, it's relatively harmless. But if we are at all introspective, and this is the thing about shifting from being self-centered to being spiritually centered. The self-centered person is almost, the truly self-centered person is almost never really introspective. So they're never really looking at their own intentions, nor are they really looking at the intentions of others, except to try to detect how to take advantage of them. So when you become introspective, as you must if you're going to pursue spiritual life, then you begin to hear the voice of your conscience, or buddhi. This doesn't happen immediately. Of course, most of us, it's something that has already happened because we've been pursuing this for some time. You begin to hear the voice of your conscience. If you hear the voice of your conscience, it will accurately reflect what it is. That's the responsibility and attribute of the buddhi. It accurately reflects what is there. And so our conscience is, so to speak, the voice of the buddhi. And when we hear it clearly, there's no real difficulty in discerning whether we should accept a gift or not. And as the Swami points out, most gifts in social life are perfectly harmless. They're just an expression of affection, or even something deeper, love, or just gratitude for you being who you are. Yeah, that'll do it, I think. So,
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Anything else from anyone about any of this? This is very provocative, what Patanjali and the Swami are talking about here.
I have lots to say, and I won't, maybe I'll say some of it and we can come back to the rest. But the whole thing of gift giving is interesting. And of course, this isn't contemporary writing. But as far as gifts in daily social life being relatively harmless, I don't think that's necessarily true, because at least in this country and in our culture, the Christmas holiday gift giving has become such a thing that people go into debt in order to buy presents for everyone that they think is expecting a present from them. And I'm not talking about little kids, because you do what you can to make it fun for them. But and the same with birthdays. Some people just, to me, a real gift is when somebody just pops up out of the blue with something special for you. That's a real gift. And I'm not saying the other is evil or bad, but I don't think it's entirely harmless. And something that should be looked at a little more carefully instead of just followed like, well, this is just what we have to do. It's a kind of slavishness, to use that word.
Amen to all that, dear. Amen to everything you said. It's all true and it's all accurate as far as the opinion from here. You're dead on. All of that you said is very auspicious and accurate. Any comments or questions in response?
Brother Zucker,
Yes.
Can you speak on giving spiritual advice to others?
Well, giving spiritual advice to others is a very delicate situation. if other people ask for your advice and you feel that you have something genuine that will genuinely contribute and is auspicious for them, then of course, if they've asked and you feel like you have something you can offer, it comes from the heart, or you don't even know particularly where it comes from, it just comes from the spirit, then by all means. But to give spiritual advice to others when they haven't asked, to try to influence other people uh, and redirect their lives when they haven't asked is a very selfish and potentially harmful thing to do. If you, because of the power of your personality, manage to persuade them, you had better be right, because you share the karma that results from that. Because if it's inappropriate or inauspicious for them and they follow it, then it's very bad for the person, and it's also because you share in the karma of both the auspicious advice and the inauspicious advice. You may not like the results that happen, and oftentimes people will come back and really bite you if you've given them inauspicious advice. So that's the best I have to offer on that, Robert. Does that get it?
Well, partially. Well, in this class, we share back and forth spiritual information all the time.
Mm-hmm.
How does that apply?
Well, all of us are here voluntarily, and all of us understand that this is what's going to happen. As a matter of fact, it's what we mean by the art of studying the art of spirituality together. So people who are here and hear something like Cindy just said, they know the spirit in which it's offered, and they know they're here. They're likely to hear such things. So it's altogether auspicious and beneficial that we share in this way. This is why there's also in the prayer that phrase, may no misunderstandings arise amongst us. If someone says something and you feel a resistance and you feel insistent, then you know that you have a problem. They don't have a problem. You have a problem because you're trying to control the situation. That's not what studying the art of spirituality together means. It doesn't mean, of course, if we say something appropriate and auspicious, it may be shared by others and they may take that under consideration. And that's the way it should always be. It should be taken under consideration. How will this apply to me?
Well, some things may apply to 3 or 4 of us in the group, and it may apply another way to another 3 or 4 in the group. So how do we?
It's not our responsibility to decide, Robert. We don't try to. It's not up to us to decide who should do what with what we offer. We offer what we offer from our own wisdom or experience, or we offer a question or a concern because something arises as a concern for us. How do I deal with this? Or we need clarification, so we ask a question. But we must not try actively to influence others. It's not our business. We simply respond spontaneously at best. We react and respond auspiciously and spontaneously to what is said. But it's not our business to try to control or influence others. We simply say what we say because it's true for us. I hope. Does that make sense, Robert?
Yes, I think you misunderstood my question. I was talking about, you know, everything is you know, it goes into good and bad. What's good for one person might be bad for another, and what's bad for another might be good for still another. And I was saying that once we discuss a particular subject that may be good for some people in the group, it might be bad for some others. How do we get around giving negative influence for those that it's not good for?
It's not our responsibility, Robert. We must trust to their discernment. We shouldn't try to control our words so that because we think it'll be good for this person and not good for the other person. And you simply share from your own wisdom or experience what's true for you and trust to the other person's discernment as to whether it'll be useful or not useful to them. You don't need to concern yourself at all about whether or not that's true.
Okay, I got it.
Okay?
I sure wouldn't want somebody censoring themselves because they thought, oh, well, this may be bad for Cindy. I want to be able to make that decision for myself.
Yes, and you do make those decisions for yourself. I mean, I know you. What you're exposed to, you make those very good and auspicious determinations for yourself. I mean, Cindy and I have had conversations now for, I guess 12 or 11 years. And I have great respect for her discernment and her sense of herself. And I think that's true of everyone that's here. I don't think there's anyone who's helpless in the face of what's said here. I think everyone that comes to these classes and talks is already a quite self-determined person. So they can be trusted to. And that's why I offer that caveat before talks. This is not meant as personal instruction for you. This is practices and principles. Use them or not as is auspicious for you.
Brother. Hello.
Yes. Hello, Stephen. Namaste.
Yes. Namaste. I wanted to ask you too, this reading we just had and some of the comments that have been made. I've always kind of wondered because, coming from a Christian background and even one that's tended to be more evangelical, I've always kind of wondered in being in Vedanta, like, is there any kind of evangelical aspect as far as sharing the word about Vedanta with others? And I've been very, and I was not everyone. My personality was not such that I didn't really fit in very well with the whole evangelical thing, just tending to be more introverted. And so, but I do still wonder sometimes, like, about, well, should I share more with others? Or if someone seems like, they could benefit from Vedanta. I mean, and so would you comment a little bit on that?
Well, you'll notice, Stephen, that we do not advertise or proselytize or evangelize. We do not actively try to draw people to this lineage and this tradition. People find their way here on their own. How that happens is a mystery, and sometimes people explain, and many times they do not, and there's no reason that they should. Now, is there anything at all evangelical about this? Swami Vivekananda, speaking to the Brooklyn Ethical Association in 1895, gave his talk, The Real and the Apparent Man. In that talk, he is quite insistent on some particular points of view that contravene the prevailing spirituality of the society into which he was speaking, and particularly this Christian materialism of everything is improving because of the mechanical improvements in the world and so on. Dr. Pangloss, in every day, in every way, things are getting better and better. You may know that quote from that satire. Dr. Pangloss says this. Well, though Swami Vivekananda did not comment on that directly, that's what he was speaking to, that falsehood. And so what the reporter from the Brooklyn Standard said, he didn't ask it as a question, he simply said, Swami, we do not normally think of Hinduism as an evangelizing religion. And Swami Vivekananda thought about it a few moments and said, I have a mission to the West as Buddha had a mission to the East. But by that he meant it was his mission to speak this truth into this prevailing cultural situation, even though it seemed like he was trying to persuade and was trying to persuade people to rethink what they were. Now, this is Vivekananda, but did Vivekananda establish centers that evangelized or proselytized or even advertised? No, very deliberately he did not. He very specifically, he established himself two centers, one in New York and one in San Francisco, and they were to be completely invisible as far as the society was concerned, except for people who came looking for them. And this was the Vedanta Society of New York and the Vedanta Society of Northern California and San Francisco. And still, there is no advertising, so as far as sharing with other people, as you said, sharing the possibility of Vedanta with them. In the very early days of my exposure to and my entrancement, my enchantment with Swami Prabhavananda, I simply invited about a dozen people that I knew that I thought might be similarly influenced by or attracted to the Swami. I simply said, you might like to hear this man speak. You might like to see him. So I invited about a dozen people. I didn't try to convert them to anything. I just said, you might want to see this man. Out of the dozen that I took, 3 were interested, 2 only mildly, and that soon evaporated, and only 1 person really became in any way attached to the Vedanta Society of Southern California. That experience led me to just simply stop doing that. And I talked about it with some of the nuns, and they said, don't do that. Just let people find their way here on their own. As the way one of them put it is, Sri Ramakrishna does his own preaching. So that's my answer to your question, Stephen.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right. Yes. So, well, that does help me, because sometimes I wonder if I'm not meeting if I have a responsibility to share, because so often, as I said, with the Christian evangelical background, it was like really a responsibility to share the gospel with others.
But what did Christ say? He said, go into a village, tell them what I've said. If they're interested, wonderful, stay and teach. If not, shake the dust of that place from your feet and move on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So this evangelism, this testifying and all that business, it's really more about social control in the long run than it is about really sharing. Very few people have enough to share, for one thing. They are not very evolved in spiritual life, so they don't have a whole lot yet to share.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus was often said to have said, when he was getting ready to say something, let them that have ears to hear, which to me was just like saying, this is for those who understand it or are drawn to it, and the rest of you, go about your business.
Precisely.
And that,
But that was Jesus speaking, Jesus had some, we have the belief that Jesus had the authority. As was said of him, he speaks not as the scribes and the Pharisees, but as one having authority. And he paid the price. He paid the price for having the temerity to shame the Pharisees. You have the keys. You neither use them nor share them. Shame on you. That remark alone signed his death warrant.
What keys did they have?
Hmm?
What keys did the Pharisees have that they neither
They had all the wisdom of the prophets. The prophets had given them all the teachings from Ezekiel to Isaiah. It was all there. All of the truth that Jesus was speaking.
but
But
people,
instead, they maintained this Old Testament God of hellfire and damnation and confinement.
but the people didn't, most of the people then, as sometime later, weren't interested in the truth, or they wanted potatoes and onions and eggplants.
Yes.
I mean, that's the same.
What Cindy's talking about. Excuse me, Cindy, go ahead.
No, I was interrupting you. Now you may.
What Cindy meant by potatoes and eggplants and onions. Swami Brahmananda, when he was president of the Ramakrishna Order, which he was for about 20 years or so, many people came to him because they regarded him as spiritually powerful. And he lamented, without condemning or judging, he lamented, we have the keys to the treasure box, those same keys that I was just talking about that the Pharisees had, the knowledge of how to progress in spiritual life. We have the keys to the treasure box. And yet what most people come for is potatoes, eggplants, and onions. And by that he meant they wanted him to pray for their son to pass his college examinations, for their daughter to have an auspicious marriage, for them to win a lawsuit, and so on. They wanted his spiritual power to do something for them that they felt was important in a mundane life, ordinary sense, rather than asking him for what he really had to give, which was the spiritual treasure of the attainments of Sri Ramakrishna, which he could, by giving spiritual instruction, share that treasure. So that's what Cindy meant by people coming for potatoes, eggplants, and onions. And again, we should not judge either. Let people decide for themselves how they should live their lives. And if what they want is potatoes, eggplants, and onions, well and good. May they have them and in plenty until they are satisfied and with that and look beyond it. This is what the book Divine Grace is all about. I recommend highly to anyone, read that book Divine Grace about what it is to live a worldly life, and until you have manifested what you came here with, which was given with the gifts that you were given at birth, and so on. Anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
I have a couple of comments and maybe a question somewhere there. One thing is, the longer I've been part of this group, the more comfortable I am asking questions or sharing my experiences, because I have the confidence that I'm not going to be judged. And also, sometimes I'm not sure if I've put across the question in the most efficient manner, but somehow you seem to grasp what I need and you distill it so well that it helps me. That's what I wanted to say. And then secondly, sometimes, I don't necessarily bring up Vedanta or whatever, but in the course of a conversation with my family or friends and some life situation comes up, then from within me something comes up. Like if it's something that has appealed to me or has changed a certain way I look at things, then I feel a happiness in sharing that. But I don't like insist that may be right for them, but it's just something that happens spontaneously where I share. And another one was this one example where this gentleman had posted a short clip in Japanese, which translated to "I accept." And then I met him in person, and he was telling me, "Oh, I sent you this video, and it's all you didn't reply, and it's about accepting." And he went on and on about how important it is to accept things in life. And I nodded my head, and I, kind of listen. And then he was like, "You go to all these what class do you go on the weekends? You go somewhere Vedanta, and you have anything to say about it?" And I just laughed. I said, I agree that acceptance is important, and left it at that. But sometimes I think
well, some people are
worth.
just like this gentleman. They want to be insistent. They want you to share their view and their opinion. It makes them feel more secure if it's only out of their fear and inherent doubt themselves that they're so insistent that others, if you have no fear and doubt, you just, there's nothing for you to do. As Swami Swahananda said, he began to ask the monastics to speak on Sundays. They'd never been asked before. And one of them, Nitya Chaitanya, came to him and said, "Swami, what do I know that I should stand up on that podium and speak to the congregation? I feel intimidated by this." And the Swami said, "It does not so much matter what you say. Your life will speak for you." And Nitya Chaitanya means he was a brahmachari in the Ramakrishna order, a monk. Nitya Chaitanya. And it was absolutely true. People came and listened to Nitya when he spoke, because his life was so exemplary. He was such an exemplary monk. And so if you are an exemplary person, that is to say, if you are living the truths that you are studying here, you will radiate that. You will be that. And some people may have, as Cindy said, the ears to hear the meaning behind your actions and your words, and may even ask you, how have you become this way? Very, very, very rare. But if someone does ask you in that instance, then you can say, well, this is what happened, and this is how I started studying this, and this is what's happened since, so on, to the extent that you can see that they continue to be interested. If their interest flags, and you can tell immediately when a person's interest flags, they'll either change the subject or their body language will let you know they're no longer interested. And then if you detect that, you simply stop speaking. They've heard enough.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Brother Shankar?
Yes, dear.
I'd like to just give a quick comment on one of the parts of the commentary.
Yes, please.
Very, very small part, a very small comment. Much has been said and written about in this path about chastity or continence.
Mhm.
And I am struck by the simplicity and clarity of the Swami's one sentence. Sex is inseparable from attachment, and attachment is an obstacle to spiritual knowledge. I mean, there's a logical syllogism right there that you just cannot refute. And I just was impressed by the clarity that that statement comes from.
Precisely. Someone said to me one time, when you have sex with another person, a line has been crossed. And what that was, the intention behind that is immediately there becomes attachment and jealousy. It just comes along with the package. And so this is why lust is auspiciously restrained. Now, within marriage, the Swami, along with virtually every other spiritual teacher, says sex within marriage is perfectly natural, perfectly fine, and there's nothing, then what is preached? Moderation, simply moderation. But this lustful sex outside of marriage, as you say, the Swami just nails it in one sentence. Thank you for that observation. That's very apt. And applies to every one of us because, as Jimmy Carter said, when he was interviewed by Playboy, he was asked about his feelings about this particular Playboy model. And he says, I have to confess, I lusted for her in my heart. Mm-hmm. He didn't lie about being unfaithful to Rosalind in that, just to that measure. I lusted for her in my heart.
And that caused quite a stir in our culture back then.
Oh, yes, it did. I mean, this was the President of the United States speaking.
Well, here is, again, is Swami's commentary on that. Continence is chastity in word, thought, and deed.
Exactly.
Go. Yeah.
And so Jimmy Carter was very aware of that. He is a very deeply spiritual man. And through the Christian tradition, and has no problem with other people's spirituality either because of that. Anything else from anyone? All right, why don't you just read that last again? We have just 5 minutes left, and read that last, and we'll see if there's anything else in the way of comments or questions or observations. And then if not, we'll just leave it.
Brother, I was going to suggest, maybe this is what you're suggesting. The next shloka and commentary are fairly short, and then I think that brings us to a good stopping place.
Okay, good. We'll read on then.
Okay. Shloka 31. These forms of abstention are basic rules of conduct. They must be practiced without any reservations as to time, place, purpose, or caste rules. And I'll read that again. These forms of abstention are basic rules of conduct. They must be practiced without any reservations as to time, place, purpose, or caste rules. Patanjali admits of no excuses or exceptions. When he tells us, for example, to abstain from harming others, he means exactly what he says. He would have no patience with a man who assured him, "Certainly I'll abstain from killing, except, of course, in time of war on a battlefield when we're fighting in a just cause and it's my duty anyway as a member of the armed forces." So that concludes the commentary.
Indeed.
Yay, Patanjali.
Yeah, and this is why, as the Swami remarked before, what Patanjali is addressing this to is people who are truly following the path of yoga. That doesn't mean that we can't take much from this in the way of practices and principles without being, without living the life of a yogi, which is a life of separation and solitude. A yogi is not someone who engages in social behavior. They live an introverted life, as we'll see as we go on in the book. People who are truly yogis and follow the yoga path, they practice Raja Yoga or Patanjali's workbook to its fullest. They do not live ordinary lives. They do not live life in the world. And so this is why the Swami just wrote what he wrote. You know, no excuse would be permitted by Patanjali. Now, no excuse is necessary for anyone else. There's no one to excuse yourself to. You have nothing to prove, nothing, there's no one sitting in judgment of you. As Cindy pointed out before, self-determination is an absolute fundamental criterion to practice the practice of spiritual life. You simply can't do everything all at once. You have to decide what is auspicious and appropriate for me. And when some people encourage you to do this, like this Japanese man saying, you must accept this philosophy of acceptance, is that for me or is it not? And why is he being so insistent? What is he trying to do? So, and this is why it was said just a few sentences ago in the commentary that this is not a sometime thing. This is something that is done. You might read that sentence if you can find it, Jeff, about it not being a sometime thing. It being.
Yes. Patanjali admits no excuses or exceptions. When he tells us, for example, to abstain from harming others, he means exactly what he says. And
no, I meant go back a bit, where it's something that is done all the time, every day. And I don't have the exact words, but it's in the prior commentary, the commentary on the prior sloka.
Our words and our thoughts must be truthful, always in conformity with the facts.
No, and it doesn't matter. Just finding those particular words. I'll just paraphrase it. If we're a true spiritual aspirant, not because anyone tells us to, like I'm saying, you must do this. It's not a question of dogma. It's just a question of you find that there can't be any lapse in your attention. Sure, you have to do your daily duties and you work, but you do them in the spirit of within the context of spirituality, so that you're always focused on what is the next right thing, and how to do it auspiciously and for yourself and for others. Anything else from anyone? All right. We had a nice large group today. That's always so thrilling for me, that there's a lot of us. Why? Because the sharing that is going on is beneath the surface as well as that which is verbalized. We share with one another because we are not really separate beings. We are beneath the surface, one consciousness, which shows up as all these different awarenesses. All of these individual people that seem to be appearing on the screen. You're there. There's no two ways about it. But beneath that, there is this unity and this sharing of heart, soul, and mind that is going on beneath the surface. And this is the deep meaning of studying the art of spirituality together. We make greater progress together than we will make on our own because of that tremendous power that is inherent in our very being, which is what we'll talk about tomorrow at the Open Forum on Jnana Yoga. The nature of that being that is beneath the surface. So tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock, Open Forum on Jnana Yoga. I hope that as many of you as find it practical can attend, and for exactly the same reason that I just mentioned now, because it adds to the power of what happens. Any final thought or comment or question from anyone? All right. Notice, if you will, what a profound prayer this little Sanskrit formulation is. Om Hari Om. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya. Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya. Mrityorma Amrutangamaya. Abir Moiti. O dearly beloved Lord, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from this realm of endless noise and relentless confusion to thine abode of silence, serenity, clarity, and peace. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. O Lord, lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from death to immortality. Light us through and through. light us through and through with thy everlasting, shining presence. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga, Durga, Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. May we be always and know we are always in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our mother and father. It is our birthright. It is our natural place to be. Jai Shri, Jai Shri, Jai Shri. Any final thought from anyone? All right, dears. Until tomorrow at 11 a.m., may you all be well and in bright spirits. And sayonara.